In the ruins of a war-torn South, where death claimed millions in its merciless grip, one woman, scarred by plagues that should have buried her, stood defiant. But as doctors drained her veins in search of God's forbidden secret, they awakened a curse of guilt and divine reckoning, one that still haunts the shadows of history. In the shadowed aftermath of America's bloodiest war, where the air still carried the acrid scent of burned gunpowder and smoldering ruins, a single soul emerged as a beacon of unholy resilience. It was the spring of 1871, and the medical minds of Virginia, those self-proclaimed guardians of life, found themselves ensnared by a mystery that clawed at the very foundations of their science. Mary, a 43-year-old woman whose life had been forged in the unrelenting chains of slavery on a sprawling tobacco plantation just outside Richmond, had stared into the abyss of death not once, but thrice. Smallpox in 1854, its pustules erupting like volcanic fury across her flesh, claiming souls around her like a biblical plague. Typhoid fever in 1863, amid the chaos of cannon fire and crumbling empires, twisting her insides with fevered delirium. And cholera in 1869, that swift reaper of the gut, draining life from the strong and weak alike in waves of vomit and despair. These scourges had ravaged the nation, their collective toll eclipsing 8 million graves, yet Mary walked among the living, her body a map of craters and scars, a testament to survival that mocked the natural order. She wasn't just alive, she was a riddle wrapped in flesh, drawing the gaze of Richmond's elite physicians like moths to a forbidden flame. In the sterile confines of the Medical College of Virginia, they circled her with instruments of cold steel and probing eyes, drawing vial after vial of her crimson essence, week upon week. They dissected her memories of agony, cataloging each shudder, each fevered dream, in tomes bound in leather that creaked like old bones under the weight of secrets. Probes, scales, and stethoscopes mapped her form, but what they unearthed, or rather, what they chose to bury, languished in the college's damp basement vaults for over 8 decades, shrouded in deliberate oblivion, as if the truth itself carried a contagion too perilous to unleash. Pause here, let the weight settle. Imagine the dim glow of gas lamps flickering on yellowed pages, the scratch of quill on parchment echoing like accusations in the night. This wasn't mere curiosity, it was an obsession that blurred the line between healer and hunter, between science and sin. Mary's blood became their holy grail, a potential elixir against the invisible demons of disease. But in their pursuit, they tread upon sacred ground, invoking questions of divine will. Was her survival a miracle of grace, or a warning from the heavens about the hubris of man? The Bible speaks of plagues as judgments. Pharaoh's waters turned to blood, the firstborn slain in the night. Was Mary a vessel of redemption, or a harbinger of retribution for a nation stained by the original sin of slavery? Before we plunge deeper into this vortex of medical zeal and moral decay, if tales of shadowed histories, where the veil between life and the afterlife thins to a whisper, ignite your soul, subscribe to our channel now. Drop a comment below, which forgotten soul from history haunts your dreams? We're building a fellowship of seekers, from the misty coasts of Maine to the sun-baked deserts of Arizona. Your voice adds to the chorus. Now, let us unravel the thread. The enigma that gripped the medical journals of 1871 was stark in its simplicity. How did she endure when empires of the dead rose around her? Yet the path they carved in search of answers exposed a rot far deeper than any pathogen, a revelation of how civilized men, cloaked in white coats and wielding scalpels like scepters, could reduce a human spirit to mere machinery, dissecting dignity in the name of progress. It was a dance with darkness, where empathy withered under the glare of ambition, and the echoes of chains long broken still rattled in the examination rooms. Richmond, in those fragile years post-1865, was a ghost city clawing its way from the inferno. The Confederate capital had been torched in a final act of defiance, flames leaping from warehouse to warehouse like avenging angels, devouring over 20 blocks in a night of biblical fury. Union soldiers, arriving amid the chaos, had battled the blaze with buckets and bare hands, but the scars lingered like open wounds on the earth's skin. 6 years on, the James River slithered past skeletal docks, its waters murky with the silt of forgotten cargoes, tobacco bales and cotton heaps that once fueled fortunes now reduced to ash. Weeds choked the foundations of gutted buildings, their tendrils snaking through fractured bricks like fingers from the grave. Grand antebellum mansions on Franklin Street sagged under the weight of neglect, their ornate porticos cracked, windows shattered like broken promises, gardens overrun with thorny vines that whispered of neglect and retribution. The streets pulsed with a fragile truce, gray-coated veterans limping alongside freedmen, their eyes meeting in fleeting glances heavy with unspoken grudges. Exhaustion bound them more than law, survival demanded it. Before the war, Richmond housed 38,000 souls, nearly half in bondage, their labor the unseen engine of opulence. Emancipation had shattered those chains, but freedom proved a hollow vessel. No 40 acres, no mule, no schooling to bridge the chasm. Many, like Mary, remained tethered to the same soil, the same masters rebranded as employers, their wages vanishing into inflated rents and debt traps. It was slavery's ghost, dressed in new ledgers, where power bowed not to justice but to the almighty dollar. Yet amid this desolation, one edifice rose defiant, the Medical College of Virginia, perched on East Marshall Street in its enigmatic Egyptian building. Conceived in 1838, it mimicked ancient temples, tapering columns etched with hieroglyphs, evoking the mystique of pharaohs to lend gravitas to fledgling science. During the war, it transformed into a charnel house, halls echoing with the moans of the maimed. Thousands passed through, limbs sawn off on blood-slicked tables, gangrene blooming like black roses, dysentery and typhoid sweeping like divine scourges through overcrowded wards. Cannon thunder provided the grim soundtrack, while surgeons, sleeves rolled to elbows stained red, wrestled with death under flickering lanterns. Dr. James Calder had been the storm's unyielding anchor. At 56 in 1871, he towered over his peers, his frame lean and unbowed, gray hair swept back from a forehead etched with lines like ancient runes. His hands, broad, veined, perpetually in motion, betrayed a farmer's heritage, though medicine had claimed him decades ago. They never faltered, not in the frenzy of amputations, not when ether fumes hung heavy, not when screams pierced the air like accusations from hell. Trained at the University of Pennsylvania in the 1830s, Calder had imbibed debates on disease's origins, miasmas rising from fetid swamps like vengeful spirits, or invisible agents lurking in touch and tainted water. European whispers from Pasteur and Koch hinted at microscopic culprits, but Calder anchored himself in empiricism: observe, record, seek patterns in the chaos. His office shelves groaned under journals chronicling the war's toll, names, ages, agonies meticulously inked in his slanted script. Late nights found him poring over them, gaslight casting elongated shadows, as if communing with the dead for answers. Personal loss fueled this quest, married at 24 to Catherine, who bore 3 children before puerperal fever claimed her and their newborn in 1849. Calder had stood helpless, his knowledge a cruel joke, watching fever devour her vitality, delirium stealing her essence. That void birthed his obsession: why do some succumb while others defy? It was a spiritual quandary as much as scientific, echoing Job's lament, questioning if survival was mercy or trial. Mary entered his world not as flesh and blood, but as epistolary enigma. A missive arrived in late February 1871 from Thomas Waverley, master of Waverley Tobacco Plantation in Henrico County, 15 miles east. Waverley detailed an employee with a history defying mortality, 3 epidemics conquered. Hearing of the college's interest in immunity, he offered her for study in exchange for coin to offset lost labor. Calder's pulse quickened, he reread the lines thrice, then dashed a reply: $50, a princely sum, for months of access. Agreement sealed, but Mary remained a cipher: no surname, no backstory, just Mary. Her consent? Irrelevant in Calder's calculus. She was data incarnate, a key to unlocking disease's locks, potentially sparing multitudes. Her humanity? A footnote. This mindset wasn't aberration but norm. Slavery's legacy had commodified black bodies, dissected in anatomy labs, experimented upon without mercy. J. Marion Sims honed gynecology on enslaved women, sans anesthesia, deeming their pain lesser, a breakthrough lauded. Calder professed no malice, in his mind, respect existed. But abstraction trumped reality, science's altar demanded sacrifice, and Mary's autonomy was the lamb. Dawn broke cold on that March morning in 1871, frost glazing the fields like a shroud. Waverley's wagon creaked under Mary's weight as she perched in back, shawl clutched against the biting wind. The journey dragged, hooves clopping rhythmically over rutted roads, countryside yielding to urban sprawl. Richmond loomed, spires piercing low clouds, smoke curling from chimneys like souls ascending. Mary had glimpsed the city thrice before, once as a child hauling market goods, once fleeing war's advance, once for a cousin's burial. Each visit overwhelmed, the cacophony of vendors hawking wares, horses neighing, the press of bodies in streets slick with mud and refuse. Smells assaulted, fresh bread mingling with sewage, coal smoke stinging eyes. At 43, her birth date blurred, late summer 1828, her mother Ruth whispered, before perishing in childbirth when Mary was 7, the infant brother following. No records for the enslaved, survival was ledger enough. Medium built, shoulders forged in fields, Mary's face pitted like lunar craters from smallpox, hands etched with scars, tobacco's razor leaves, fire's kisses, indelible stains from sap. Born in southern Virginia to Ruth and a phantom father, Samuel, from afar. Orphan young, communal arms raised her, cabins shared, lessons in toil amid tobacco's cycle, planting under spring suns, weeding through human hells, harvesting as leaves turn gold, then winters stripping in barns reeking of cured leaf. Work defined her, nimble fingers grating tobacco, earning marginal favors, extra rations, a drier roof, fewer lashes. Marriages fleeting, Jacob at 17, sold away after 6 moons, Thomas at 24, claimed by pneumonia 3 years in. Love's memory faded, a warm ember in winter's chill. 2 children, Ruth, 21 now, toiling in Waverly's big house, her quiet wisdom a shield, Daniel, sold at 12 for wartime debts, vanished north perhaps, alive in freedom's haze. The unknown gnawed like an open wound, sharper than loss's blade. Waverly drove silent, horses his sole converse. Explanation scant, doctors probe your miracles, answer true, it'll pass. Mary doubted, white men's interest birth peril. But choice? Illusion. Emancipation freed bodies, not fates, landless, she clung to Waverly's domain. Defiance meant eviction, starvation's maw. The Egyptian building materialized, columns like sentinels from ancient tombs. Wagon halted, Waverly beckoned. Inside, air thick with carbolic bite and ether's sickly sweet decay, death's perfume. Halls pale green, footsteps resounding like judgments. A suited youth, a student, likely escorted upstairs to examination room 3, compact, window high, table central, desk cluttered with tools glinting ominously. 3 men rose, Calder, tall and commanding, Hayes, youthful with bearded unease, Marshall, pale-eyed, unblinking like a serpent. Handshakes for Waverly, none for Mary. Cooperative, Waverly assured, departing till afternoon. Alone, vulnerability crashed like waves. Sit, Calder commanded, notebook poised. Interrogation commenced, smallpox's onset, fever's grip, chills and heat, rashes eruption into fluid-filled horrors, crusts shedding to scars eternal. 3 weeks in the sick barn, death claiming 11, isolation their care. Typhoid, winter 1863, fever ascending, rose spots blooming, delirium's veil, month of weakness. Cholera, 1869 summer scourge, cramps twisting like knives, fluids fleeing, Sarah expiring gray and hollow. Mary's revival, miraculous, unexplained. Family history? Remedies? Anomalies? None, she claimed, strong constitution, swift healing. Calder noted all, eyes alight with zeal. Then, undress fully. Trembling, she complied, dress pooling like shed skin. Naked, exposed under their gaze, circling, murmuring, 300 scars, severe, surprising survival. Measurements, height, limbs, circumferences, haze flushing, avoiding eyes. Probes, ears, mouth, reflexes, abdomen pressed, stethoscope cold against skin like judgment's ear. Bloodletting, arm extended, scalpel sting, crimson flowing into vials, 3, brimming with her essence. Dizziness swirled, visions of war's gore, Sarah's husk. Bandaged, dressed, but stripped forever, body catalogued, spirit invaded. Yet in this violation, spiritual undercurrents stirred. Was her blood a sacrament, echoing Christ's cup? Or a temptation, like Eve's fruit, luring men to play God? Calder saw puzzle, Mary felt chains anew, divine justice hovering, ready to strike the proud. Her survival? Not luck, but providence's mark, a living parable of endurance amid iniquity, whispering of redemption's distant dawn. As days blurred into weeks, the examinations deepened. Calder's team returned her to Richmond repeatedly, Waverly ferrying her like cargo. Each visit peeled layers, more blood drawn, skin scraped for samples under microscopes revealing nothing conclusive. They tested reactions, exposing her to weakened pathogens in controlled doses, watching for immunity spark. Mary's dread mounted, fevers induced artificially, monitored in isolation rooms where shadows danced like accusing spirits. Hayes grew conflicted, his notes faltering, subject exhibits remarkable resilience, but at what cost to her soul? Marshall pressed on, clinical detachment a mask for ambition. Calder, driven by Catherine's ghost, saw salvation in data patterns emerging, elevated white cells, unusual antibodies hinting at genetic grace. But morally? The Bible loomed. What does it profit a man to gain the world and lose his soul? They ignored her pleas for rest, her body's toll weight dropping, scars reopening under stress. Mary's prayers in the wagon rides, psalms of deliverance, invoking angels against these earthly pharaohs. Richmond's atmosphere amplified the chill, rain-slick streets reflecting gaslights like hellfire, whispers of freedmen's uprisings, spectral figures in fog. The college buzzed with rumors, Mary's miracle blood debated in lectures, students peering like vultures. Expansion deepened, psychological probes, delving dreams during illnesses, visions of light-piercing darkness, voices urging perseverance. Spiritual symbolism? Calder dismissed as superstition, yet noted privately, perhaps a divine factor at play. Mary's empathy bloomed amid dread, seeing haze unease, she whispered once, God sees all, doctor. Even in the blood. He paled, but pressed on. The obsession escalated, plans for vivisection-like tests, borders blurring. Mary's curiosity turned reflection, her survival a mirror to America's sins, slavery's plague demanding atonement. In this cauldron, tension built, would science redeem or damn? Emotional immersion peaked in quiet moments, Mary's gaze meeting Calder's, unspoken accusation, am I puzzle or person? In the stifling haze of Virginia's Reconstruction era, where the ghosts of fallen soldiers mingled with the acrid smoke of rebuilt forges, Mary's ordeal deepened into a labyrinth of scientific fervor and moral abyss. What began as mere examinations in that cold March of 1871 evolved into a relentless siege on her body and spirit, the doctor's obsession swelling like a river fed by monsoon rains. Twice weekly, under the relentless sun or through pelting storms, Thomas Waverley's wagon would rattle along dirt paths etched with wagon ruts from slave caravans past, delivering her to the Egyptian building's shadowed maw. There, in rooms thick with the metallic tang of blood and the sharp bite of carbolic acid, Doctors Calder, Hayes, and Marshall peeled away layers of her existence, not just flesh, but the very essence of her survival, treating it as a commodity to be mined, oblivious to the divine fingerprint it bore. Calder's voice, steady as a sermon, had sealed her fate that first day, will require your return for further study, twice a week, 4 months ahead. Mr. Waverley consents, and what we glean from you could illuminate the path to conquering disease, sparing untold souls from the reaper's grasp. Mary nodded, her calloused hands clenched in her lap, but understanding pierced her like a thorn from the crown of Christ. Her triumphs over smallpox, typhoid, and cholera, those harrowing dances with death that she had attributed to quiet prayers and fevered nights, were no longer hers alone. They belonged now to these men of learning, to their leather-bound tomes and gleaming microscopes, appropriated without consent, as if her body were still chattel in a land freshly freed from chains. Was this not the ultimate theft, a sin against the sanctity of life gifted by the Almighty? The Bible warned of those who played God, like Babel's builders reaching for forbidden heights, only to invite collapse. Descending the creaking stairs on legs that wobbled like a lamb led to slaughter, Mary collapsed onto a lobby bench, the wood worn smooth by countless waiting souls. Through arched windows framed in dust-moted light, the world outside pulsed indifferently, gentlemen in frock coats striding with purpose, ladies in rustling crinolines shielding parasols from the sun's glare, children darting like sparrows across cobblestones slick with morning dew. Laughter floated in, a cruel counterpoint to the muffled voices drifting from above, discussions of her scars, her veins, her miraculous blood, as if she were a relic unearthed from some ancient tomb, ripe for desecration. Waverley arrived promptly at 3, his boots clomping across the marble floor, face flushed with the satisfaction of a shrewd deal. All squared away? Doctors content? His tone boomed jovially, oblivious to her pallor. Yes, sir, she murmured, voice a whisper lost in the echo. He chuckled, clapping her shoulder like one might a prized mule. Prime opportunity, this, $50 for chatting and sitting still. Easier than field work, eh? The wagon ride home stretched eternal, the countryside blurring into a tapestry of overgrown fields and skeletal trees, their branches clawing at the sky like pleas unanswered. Mary's mind churned, her blood, now captive in those fragile vials, scrutinized under lenses that magnified not just cells, but the hubris of man. Hands that had measured her nudity with clinical detachment, reducing her to dimensions in data. The looming returns, twice weekly, a sentence without trial. And beneath it all, the spectral faces of the fallen, Sarah's graying skin in her final throes, the cholera-racked bodies piled like cordwood, whispering, was endurance a mercy from heaven, or a curse to bear witness to humanity's follies? The routine calcified into torment, a liturgical cycle of degradation. Tuesdays and Fridays dawned with dread, Waverley's wagon becoming a chariot to perdition. 3, sometimes 4 hours in that airless chamber, undressing under their gaze, the cool air raising gooseflesh on scarred skin, questions probing deeper than any scalpel, unearthing buried agonies of fever dreams and lost kin, bloodletting, the sting of the blade a ritual offering, vials filling with her life's essence until dizziness swirled like vertigo from Golgotha's hill. Back on the plantation, she plunged into tobacco's toil, bending under blistering sun, fingers stained green and raw, soil caking under nails, as if to reclaim some shred of agency, but exhaustion clung like a shroud. At first, detachment armored her, mind wandering to Ruth's laughter or Daniel's vanished smile while probes and tapes mapped her form. But as spring yielded to summer's furnace, the doctor's zeal ignited anew, their inquiries veering into the intimate, the profane. Detail your diet every morsel, from cornmeal mush to wild berries foraged in twilight. Your sleeping quarters, damp? Crowded with the ill? Intimacies with the afflicted? Bites from beasts in the underbrush? Marshall pressed hardest, his pale eyes unblinking as a judge at the pearly gates, theorizing childhood exposures as the key to baptism and minor maladies forging an ironclad shield. Mary rummaged through faded memories, fever's blurring days, rashes blooming like forbidden fruit, but nothing extraordinary. Every child wrestled sickness, why hers a forge for miracles? Hayes, the youngest, wore his unease like a ill-fitted cassock, averting eyes during disrobings, hands trembling faintly as he measured. Once, alone as the others conferred outside, he murmured, "This cut, does it pain you?" "Some," she confessed, voice cracking the silence. "Forgive us," he replied, sincerity etching his brow, "but your gift could redeem so many from suffering." Mary held her tongue, how could crimson commonality heal? Yet his kindness flickered like a candle in catacombs, a reminder that even in sin's stronghold, grace might linger. Still, the chasm yawned, white healer versus black survivor, privileges veil impenetrable. Calder, ensconced in his office amid towering stacks of journals, pored over her samples by lamplight's glow, the microscope's brass gleaming like idolatrous gold. Notes sprawled across pages, blood unremarkable erythrocytes uniform, leukocytes standard. Frustration gnawed, a serpent in Eden, her survival defied logic, a divine anomaly mocking mortal wit. There must be a vessel, he scrawled, echoing scripture's parables of hidden treasures. Dozens of pages amassed, scars catalogued like stigmata, history dissected like prophecy, but enlightenment eluded, a mirage in the desert of ignorance. Mary's awakening came gradual, a revelation in the quiet hours. This wasn't aid, but extraction. Her vitality, incidental, her discomfort, mere notation, subject exhibits anxiety. Faint after excessive draws, they offered sips of water, but vials multiplied undeterred. Dread poisoned her nights, cabin walls closing in as winds howled psalms of lament, dogs baying like hellhounds. "How long?" she confided to Ruth one dusk, fireflies dancing like souls unbound, sky ablaze in apocalyptic hues. "They drain me, child," pieces vanishing, soul shrinking. Ruth's eyes, mirrors of her own resilience, brimmed. "Defy Waverley?" Mary scoffed, bitterness sharp as gall. "He's pocketed silver for my suffering. Fairness? The world's rigged, like Pharaoh's yoke." Ruth invoked her father, Papa would fight. Grief surged, a wave crashing. Even he couldn't shatter this. Endurance is our cross, bearing the unbearable, as Christ in the garden. Summer's oppression amplified the crucible, examination room a sweatbox, air thick as judgment's fog. Mary's back slick while doctors dabbed brows. July birthed horrors anew, Calder procuring pathogen vials, fetid fluids from the dying, mingled with her blood on slides under watchful lenses. "Safe," he assured, voice echoing hollow as a sepulchre, mere observation of your essence's war on disease. For vials that day, her arm a throbbing altar, dizziness felled her, head between knees as the room spun like Judas's betrayal. Bread and water revived, but the ride home twisted nausea, headache pounding like hammers on nails. Fever struck that night, mild but menacing, breaking by dawn yet seeding terror. Had their science sown infection? Mercy evaporated, she was expendable, a lamb for their altar, accountability a phantom in this post-slavery limbo. Her value? Data alone, suffering sanctified for progress, a chilling echo of Babel, where ambition invited divine thunder. August deepened Calder's despair, experiments exhaustive, comparisons to other subjects, volunteers pale and privileged, fellow freedmen bartered for pennies, yielded not. Mary's blood, ordinary in every assay, yet her history screamed miracle. He devoured texts, Jenner's cowpox revelations, variolations risky rites, Pasteur's germ whispers. Patterns emerged, exposure birthing resistance, bodies learning like disciples from trials. But Mary's triad defied, not repetition, but a sovereign fortitude, perhaps a general grace from the Creator, defying dissection. Correspondence flew, Philadelphia's Pierce dismissed as fabrication, Boston's Richards posited innate variation, a divine lottery unsatisfying to Calder's quest. Marshall, in a sweltering summit amid cluttered desks, proposed heresy, infect her deliberately, observe resistance in vivo. Silence fell heavy as original sin. Hayes recoiled, murder cloaked in curiosity. Marshall countered, survival probable. Knowledge invaluable, thousands redeemed. Calder pondered, scales tipping, ethics versus epidemics toll, his wife's ghost urging forward. Dreams tormented, Catherine's fevered demise, Mary's lesions weeping, blood jars infinite as souls in purgatory. Dean Somerset sanctioned, caveat documentation as if ledgers could absolve. Decision crystallized, experiment approved, preparations clandestine. September's dawn brought deception, Friday summons, hospital ward's sterile cell, bed linens crisp as shrouds, window framing oblivious thrones. Calder and Marshall entered, Hayes absent in protest. Exposure to typhoid, Calder intoned, to unveil your body's divine armor. Mary's heart thundered, you'd poison me? Marshall clarified, study resistance, mild, treatable. But her soul recoiled, a prayer unspoken, Lord, deliver me from these false prophets, their science a veil for pride's fall. As the needle poised, air hummed with tension, the room a confessional of impending sin. Would her blood repel the invader, affirming heaven's favor? Or would fever rise, a reckoning for tampering with life's sacred weave? Empathy swelled for Mary, dread for the doctor's souls, curiosity clawing at the veil of mystery, reflection on justice's inexorable wheel. The legacy? A chilling testament to redemption's price, where one woman's cross bore the weight of misguided salvation. The air in that narrow hospital room hung thick, saturated with the scent of carbolic soap and impending doom, as September 8, 1871, dawned gray and unforgiving over Richmond. Mary sat on the edge of the iron-framed bed, sheets crisp yet imprisoning, the single window framing a world of oblivious pedestrians below, lives untouched by the violation unfolding within these walls. Calder and Marshall stood before her, their dark suits absorbing the weak light, faces masks of clinical resolve. The syringe lay prepared on the side table, gleaming like a serpent's fang, but it was the innocuous glass of water Marshall extended that carried the true poison. You'll remain here under constant watch, Calder explained, voice measured as a preacher delivering doctrine, to track your body's sacred response. Mary's gaze flicked to the glass, then to their eyes, cold, expectant, unyielding. She saw the decision etched there, irrevocable as a tombstone inscription. Questions were ritual now, theater for conscience's sake. What if I die? She asked, the words slipping out soft, almost resigned, yet carrying the weight of every soul lost to plague before her. A pause, heavy as original sin. Marshall's reply came swift, edged, you've conquered typhoid once. Better care awaits this time, no barn isolation, no abandonment. Survival is probable. Calder shifted, discomfort flickering like candlelight in wind. I don't want this, Mary said, quieter still, a final ember of protest in the gathering dark. I just want to go home. Marshall's tone sharpened, scripture twisted to justify, this transcends one life. Knowledge gained could redeem thousands from fever's grasp. Your role in science is profound. Then the hammer, Mr. Waverley consents. Legally, that's binding. We explain as courtesy, your wishes are not decisive. There it lay bare, the truth she'd carried since chains first bound her ancestors, body not her own, autonomy a mirage in freedom's false dawn. Post-emancipation, power persisted in ledgers and white coats. She was specimen, not sovereign, her flesh a canvas for ambition, her will incidental. Please, one last breath, don't. Calder reverted his gaze, Marshall remained stone. Drink, Marshall commanded, pressing the glass into her trembling hand. Clear liquid, harmless to sight, bitter on tongue, a sacrament of sacrilege, laced with salmonella typhi cultured from a dying patient's bowels. Mary stared into it, visions flashing, Sarah's cholera-hollowed eyes, the smallpox scars mapping her face like divine judgment. Resistance? Futile. Force would follow, or worse, retribution on kin, on Ruth. She raised it, drank deep, the bitterness coating throat like gall from Gethsemane's cup. Glass empty, set aside. Good, Calder murmured, quill scratching ledger, 9:47 a.m., September 8, 1871. Oral ingestion, 20 milliliters typhoid culture. Subject cooperative after reluctance noted. Mary reclined, staring at cracked ceiling plaster, waiting for the invader to take root. Would fever claim her this time, engineered by men playing creator? Or would Providence spare her again, a mocking testament to their hubris? For 2 days, silence from the plague within. Examinations every 6 hours, thermometer under tongue, mercury climbing slow, pulse counted against ticking pocket watches, queries on sensation. Physically fine, yet terror gnawed each breath a countdown. Meals arrived: bread, broth, occasional meat, tasteless on tongue, heavy with dread. The bed softer than cabin straw, sheets cleaner, yet comfort mocked her vigil. Friday evening, Calder noted, no symptoms. Temp 98.4 degrees. Pulse steady. Mary asked, voice small, shouldn't it have started? Incubation varies, 1 to 3 weeks naturally, sooner with direct dose. We're charting unknown waters. Excitement edged his words, as if her peril were academic thrill. Saturday dawned warm within her. Marshall's 8 a.m. check, 99.2 degrees. Mild fever, vigilant monitoring. Evening, 100.1 degrees. Sunday morning, 101.5 degrees. The blaze ignited. Headache bloomed dull, then vicious, throbbing behind eyes, at skull's base, worsening with movement. Limbs leaden, sitting exhausting. Appetite fled, food's aroma turned stomach. Marshall perched bedside, journal open, headache description? Behind eyes, back of head. Worse moving. Severity, 1 to 10? She guessed 7, pain-defying numbers. Nausea rose, abdominal twinges hinted worse. Monday, 103 degrees. Headache constant hammer, cramps doubled her fetal. Laudanum dulled edges, thoughts fogged like delirium's veil. Calder and Hayes arrived evening. Hayes, face ashen, checked pulse, tachycardic. Dehydrated despite fluids, increase intake. Calder, if 106 degrees, aggressive cooling. For now, observe. Hayes echoed bitter, observe, while she burns. Marshall, she survived before. Document the grace. Mary, fever-racked, doubted. Wartime typhoid had nearly claimed her, delirium, certainty of death. Chance had spared, would it twice, against deliberate assault? Tuesday, 104 degrees. Delirium descended. She called ghosts, Mother Ruth, dead 36 years in childbirth's agony, Thomas, pneumonia's victim, Sarah, cholera's husk in her arms. Doctors noted, delirium, incoherent invocations of deceased. Wednesday, 105 degrees. Rose spots bloomed abdomen, typhoid's crimson signature. Shivers violent, then heat waves, blankets flung, then clutched. Vomiting relentless, fluids barely held. Hayes stormed Calder's office, end this. Marshall, course runs. Best care, fluids, laudanum. Hayes, we poisoned her for data. Marshall, seen hundreds die. Wife among them. If this unlocks prevention. Calder silenced, proceed. That night, Hayes sat vigil. Mary tossed, mumbling fragments. He cooled her brow with cloth, whispering, forgive us, this abomination. She heard nothing through fever's roar. Thursday, September 14, 6 days post-infection, peak 105.7 degrees. Skin furnace dry, pulse thready. Calder ordered cold compresses, cloths iced, sponged across forehead, neck, limbs. Evaporative cooling, crude salvation. Evening, 104.2 degrees. Friday, 103.8 degrees. Crisis ebb. Saturday, September 16, 8th day, fever shattered. Lucid dawn, hunger returned. Temp 100 degrees, evening 99.2 degrees. Body triumphed again. Marshall exulted, unprecedented. Full course documented exposure to resolution. Invaluable for immunity patterns. Calder, examining gaunt Mary, 20 pounds vanished, face hollowed, felt hollow victory. What justification? We learn she fights typhoid, again. Data obtainable from natural cases, sans deliberate harm. Marshall hardened, conscience late. Data stands. Mary lingered 3 weeks, first, bedbound weakness, second, assisted steps, third, gradual strength. Blood drawn anew, pre- and post-infection comparisons, nothing anomalous. Recovery ordinary, survival extraordinary. In solitude, reflection deepened, not natural plagues, but man-made torment. They watched agony, scribbled notes, fever numbers, pain scales, delirium transcriptions. Courtesy extended as to prized livestock. Value? Utility alone. When exhausted, discard. Hayes visited, eyes evasive. How are you? Absurdity nearly drew laughter. I argued against, he offered. Couldn't stop. Then apology rings empty, she replied, calm truth. End of September, Waverly collected her, fees paid, research lauded. Ride home, helped medicine advance, proud? Silence. Fields passed indifferent, she felt spectral, observing life through veil. Ruth embraced fierce, mama. Worried sick. Warmth real, grounding. That night, cabin bed, sleepless. Nightmares recurrent, drinking poison, fever inferno, notebooks devouring suffering. Waking gasping, Ruth soothing, you're real, mama. Most real I know. Yet scar tissue formed, invisible as smallpox pits. Months later, minor fevers sparked panic, typhoid's echo. Egyptian building glimpses in Richmond, dread surge. Overheard epidemic talk, memories surfaced, sharp. Years unfolded. 1875, 47, hair silvering, hands arthritic yet strong. Resilience endured rare illness, swift healing. Doctors never summoned, utility spent. Ruth wed 1876, life cycling onward. But Mary's legacy haunted, a parable of trespass. Men, in science's name, echoed Pharaoh hardening heart, inviting plagues upon themselves. Her blood, twice tested by typhoid's fire, bore witness not to mechanism discovered, but to sin unatoned. Divine justice? Patient, inexorable, whispering through scars, through silence, through the quiet dignity of a woman who survived not for journals, but despite them. Suspense lingers, what became of those ledgers, buried in dust? What moral debt accrues when healers become harmers? Empathy for Mary swells, her cross heavier than any natural affliction. Reflection beckons, in pursuit of saving lives, how many must we damn? In the fading twilight of a life forged in fire and endurance, where the weight of unspoken sins pressed heavier than any chain, Mary's story wound toward its shadowed close amid the unyielding rhythms of Virginia's tobacco fields. The year was 1876, and the air hung thick with the sweet, earthy scent of cured leaves drying in barns, their golden hues catching the slanting sun like fleeting promises of harvest bounty. Ruth, Mary's daughter, stood before a traveling preacher under a canopy of ancient oaks, their branches twisted like the gnarled fingers of fate. The ceremony was hushed, simple, a few verses from Psalms murmured against the wind, evoking David's pleas for deliverance from affliction. No grand bells tolled, no fine silks adorned, just the gathered workers, faces etched with the shared scars of bondage's ghost, offering quiet claps and songs that rose like spirituals from the soul's depths. Her groom was Jacob, a name that pierced Mary like a thorn from the rose of memory, echoing her first husband, sold away in youth's cruel dawn. This Jacob was steady, a carpenter whose hands, calloused from hammer and saw, mended the plantation's crumbling structures with a patience mirroring divine craftsmanship. He built not just walls, but futures, expanding cabins, repairing tools that sustained their fragile existence. Ruth moved into his home, a modest structure of weathered pine that creaked under night winds like confessions unspoken. A year later, in the sweltering heat of 1877, Mary became a grandmother. Ruth's labor echoed the biblical travails of Rachel, birthing Catherine amid cries that mingled pain and triumph. Holding the infant in her arms, soft skin unmarred, eyes wide with innocent wonder, Mary felt a seismic shift within, a loosening of the iron bands that had constricted her heart since those fateful months in 1871. This child was a vessel of pure grace, untouched by the probing eyes of white-coated inquisitors, her cries a symphony of untainted life. "She's beautiful," Mary whispered, voice cracking like parched earth under rain. Ruth, exhausted yet radiant, smiled. "She has your eyes, Mama, deep and knowing, like they've seen eternity." Mary gazed into those dark pools, praying silently for a world redeemed, where plagues and prejudices yielded to justice's dawn. But hope, she knew, was a double-edged sword, Eden's fruit, tempting yet perilous, capable of birthing both salvation and sorrow. The years unfurled like tobacco leaves under summer suns, each season a testament to endurance's quiet toll. By 1880, at 52, Mary's body betrayed the strength that had defined her. Fields once conquered with nimble hands now mocked her, back aching under the sun's relentless glare, joints swelling like rivers in flood. Thomas Waverley, ever the pragmatic overseer, reassigned her to lighter labors, stirring pots in the kitchen's steamy haze, where wood smoke curled like incense in a temple, mending frayed garments by lantern light, needles pricking skin as reminders of past wounds, overseeing young workers, her voice a guiding rod like Moses leading through wilderness. Easier on flesh, yet a bruise to pride, she who had bent but never broken now confronted age's inexorable march, a mirror to Ecclesiastes' lament, all is vanity, and a striving after wind. 1885 brought death's scythe to Waverley himself, felled by heart attack at 58, collapsing amid the fields he ruled like a pharaoh. His son, Robert, inherited a colder soul, business etched in ledgers where paternalism once softened edges. He viewed workers as entries in accounts, not kin in shared toil. Wages withered, rations shrank, cabins decayed under neglect's rot. Rain seeped through roofs like tears unshed, winds howling accusations through cracks. Mary, now 57, retreated inward, memories flooding like the James River in spring thaw. Visions of her mother Ruth, a spectral figure lost to childbirth's curse, husbands vanished to sail and sickness, Daniel, her son, auctioned. In war's chaos, his fate a void sharper than any grave. And always, the plagues, natural and inflicted, haunting like Job's trials, questioning divine purpose in survival's solitude. One evening in 1887, as the sun dipped below horizons painted in blood and gold, Mary sat outside her cabin on a stool worn smooth by years. The sky bled orange, stars emerging like watchful eyes of the Almighty. She pondered her life's mosaic, slavery's yoke, disease's infernos, loss's abysses, the doctor's betrayal, a modern crucifixion where science nailed her to examination tables. Survival? Not triumph, but enigma. Why her, when Sarah's body cooled in her arms, when barns filled with the dead? The doctor's quest yielded naught but her scars, both seen and soul deep. Ruth approached, silhouette against twilight. "Mama, you all right?" Just pondering meaning. Ruth sat, hand warm on hers. "You raise me, hold Catherine." Survived hells. Meaning abounds. To them, I was puzzle pieces. Ruth firm, they aired. You're whole, beyond pages. By 1891, at 63 and age-defying enslaved lifespans, Mary's vessel cracked, arthritis twisted fingers like thorns of the crown, vision blurred like veils over truth, hearing faded to whispers. Retired, she dwelled in Ruth and Jacob's expanded cabin, a small room scented with herbs and hearth. Days blurred in dozes, dreams weaving past in phantom, fevered barns, probing hands, blood vials glinting like Judas's silver. Death loomed familiar, a companion from thrice-faced reapers, no terror, just quiet acceptance, like Abraham's faith before the altar. Summer 1892 shattered stasis, a letter arrived, addressed to Mary, rare as manna in desert. Robert Waverley delivered it, brow furrowed, from Richmond Medical College. Ruth, literate from Catherine's teachings, a wandering educator's gift, read aloud in cabin's dim glow. From Dr. Robert Hayes, regrets confession, 21 years fermented. No insights from infection, suffering unjustified. Apology for complicity. Calder's deathbed remorse, Marshall's absence. You were person, resilient, we failed humanity. Mary's face stone, want response? Ruth asked. What words mend? Let regret fester, his cross. Yet the missive stirred depths, vindication hollow, like Pharaoh's plagues unheeded. Calder's private guilt, unacted, Marshall oblivious. Survival persisted, apologies superfluous. Fall 1893, Mary dictated her testament to Catherine, 17 and scribe skilled. Why now? For record, my voice against their notes. Months unfolded, notebook filled with halting tales, childhood shadows, mother's grave, tobacco's grind, love's lost, plagues conquered. Smallpox's eruptions like hell's boils, typhoid's delirium, calling ghosts, cholera's drain, Sarah's last breath. Doctor's saga, examination stripping dignity, blood as offering, poison water, Gethsemane's cup forced. They watched fever consume, scribbled sins. I survived, but hollowed, used vessel. Catherine wept, grandmother. Right on. Truth endures. 50 pages complete, entrusted to Ruth, preserve, someday, it matters. November 3, 1894, Mary slipped eternal, heart failing in sleep, 66 years etched in resilience. Peaceful amid family, Catherine clasping hand, like Mary's hold on Sarah, cycle closed. Ruth wrote Hayes, death notice, journal excerpts. Hayes, 52, department head, read in office lamplight, words piercing like thorns. They watched me burn, didn't care. Archives yielded Calder's tomes, data monstrous now, progress demands sacrifice echoing Cain's offering rejected. Public silence, private push for ethics, consent, justification, humanity first. Influence mild, scandals later forged change. Mary's journal family heirloom, passed like sacred scroll. Doctor's notes archived, rediscovered 1957, article footnotes subject M, ethics glossed. 1976, great-great-granddaughter Ellen Hayes unearthed journal, donated copies to Historical Society. 1983 article, brief ripple, forgotten. Mary's enigma unsolved antibodies. Genetics, chance? Lost to time. Yet truth, survived millions killers, studied, infected unjustly. Doctor's era products, intentions no balm for harm. Ethics evolved from such shadows IRBs, consent built on unnamed sufferers like her. No memorial marks her, Waverley's Ledger, Mary, 1828 to 1894, notable resistance. Archives hold dual voices, Doctor's clinical gaze, Mary's raw soul. Questions endure, who sacrifices? Progress versus dignity? Remembering honors, preventing repetition, affirming humanity. Mary, more than mystery, daughter, mother, survivor. Deserved better. Her legacy whispers, knowledge sands compassion poisons the well. What haunts you in Mary's tale? Justification possible, or line crossed eternal? Balance science, rights? Comment below. If shadowed history's grip, subscribe. Next uncovers America's medical underbelly.